Hello and welcome to this week's episode of Out and About in the UK. Coming up on today's show, we'll be in Wilson for a very interesting lecture on the life and times of Michael Collins. We'll also be in Wandsworth for one of the many music sessions in the thriving traditional Irish music scene here in London. But first, I've come along to the Irish Embassy for the launch of the All Britain Competition, which is a boys and girls tournament organised by the Provincial GAA Council of Britain.
The ABC is a unique competition. Back in 2010 I was in New York and I seen the CYC, how it was being run, and I felt to come in 2012 as president of GAA that I would try and run something similar in Britain. We set up for July 2012 and unfortunately due to horrendous bad weather we had to cancel the occasion, and we ran it in September. On that occasion we had 45 teams, which went very well over the weekend, and from 2013 we had 90 teams, so we had gone up in numbers very quick, and since last year 2016-15 we had 145 teams with 1,850 kids playing. So I think, for the culture and the community and the CDAs, the work they're doing within Britain, I think is a great achievement.
Talk to us a little bit about how Croke Park have gotten involved with the All Britain competition.
Yeah, I suppose the first thing we had to do was sow the seed and get it started, and that requires volunteers to kind of step up to the mark. And we're very fortunate that we have people like John Gormley and Brendan Bryan who had been to America, who had seen the CYC because they had been there with teams from Britain, and they said this is something we should be doing. And again, it highlights that people learn from and with each other. That's the most effective form of learning. So what was initiated in America has now precipitated its way into Britain, and it's on its way to Asia. And obviously what we would like to think is perpetuating best practice as it goes along, providing kids with the opportunity to play, and more importantly to develop themselves as people. That's what the whole thing is about. Winning and losing, they're important to an extent, but the most important thing is that people get an opportunity to develop themselves as people.
Tell us about the bridge building and how the GAA and Gaelic Games is striving to build those bridges and to bring the community together.
Well, we get on very, very well with our fellow sports people in Irish rugby and soccer. We have across community, we coach together, and each of the three associations, like ours, is that Cahulan Cup, we call it. The winners of the Cahulan Cup go forward to the All British Games. The game of three halves is a game organised by the rugby people, and also the soccer people do a similar competition with a mixed community background, and all three sports, all three organisations are represented there.
Kids that haven't grown up playing Gaelic Games, how do they transition into it?
I think one of the key things, or one of the targets that we see is the area of rugby, where a lot of kids that are playing rugby during the winter are picking Gaelic Games up during the summer, just for the handling skills, and we can see that transferring across even into the international team, where there are a number of former GAA players playing rugby. So that's what's one area that we're not focusing on, but certainly yes, we're seeing that people are coming to play our games over the winter for that very reason, for the handling skills.
For people watching tonight that want to come along, get involved with the competition itself, give us the dates, give us the locations.
Right, the dates are the 7th, 8th, 9th and 10th of July. The location is Tyrconnell Gales Ground, Berkeley Avenue, Greenford. And on day one is Thursday, the 7th of July, we have the primary schools. On the 8th of July, which is Friday, we have the secondary schools in the morning. And the afternoon, we have the Go Games, the 8s and 10s. And then on the Saturday morning, we have the 12s and 16-year-olds and the ladies' competition. And on the Sunday morning, we have the 12s and 18-year-olds, and we have camogie and hurling. That's the format for the weekend. And we'll finish on the Claddering in Hindon for now dinner on the Sunday night for the volunteers.
And is there a website people can log on if they want to get more information?
Well, the GAA Britain website, which is now being rebuilt by our chairman, Sean Hackett, is up and running, and Carol McGuigan is our PRO. So these two lads, we feed them in the information and they will build the website from there. So hopefully everybody will be on board with us for that weekend.
Well done there to the Provincial GAA Council of Britain for yet again organising what I'm sure is going to be a great event for the Irish community here in London. Next, we're off to Wandsworth for one of the many traditional Irish music sessions here in London.
The Irish scene is alive and well. This pub, we always show the GAA here during the summer from May through to September, and we always found 6 o'clock, 6:30, the pub emptied out, nothing much doing after that. So there was definitely an opening there for something, and we thought an Irish session would be the way to go. And it's definitely Sunday evenings here now are buzzing because of it, and there's nowhere else in this area doing an Irish session.
The session started 2 years ago. Colin Lynch, the landlord, asked us to play on St Patrick's Day, which we did, and it worked out brilliantly and took off. And he asked us to come back the following week, and 2 years later we're still here. And it's a brilliant session.
People that are coming over from Ireland now are highly educated. They're walking into good jobs, but at the end of the day, they still want to have that touch with home, and they want to come to a place that shows Irish sport, a place that has a bit of Irish music, a place that basically they can link back to home with. And I'd like to think that we offer that here.
He's very supportive, so people tell me I'm very lucky as someone who's sort of hosting the session most weeks to have a landlord who's really into the music. He looks after us, and the customers love it, and it's got a community feel.
I came over here in 2008 when there was an economic downturn in Ireland, got offered a job, came over here, didn't know what to expect, and I started working here in the city in Canary Wharf. And after a couple of months, I was missing the Mist on the Mountain, a couple of tunes, and I played a lot at home. And a great friend of mine over here, Dara O'Neill, a brilliant flute player, told me about this session in South Wimbledon where John Bowe played. And I used to get the tube down there every Sunday without fail, and we go down and have a few tunes, and it just took away any kind of homesickness. And it was great to play music of that style and genre in London. And 2 years ago, after a night of music, I met Geraldine Gilmartin, fabulous lady and great singer, and we kept in touch, and then she encouraged me to come down to this session here. And ever since I've been coming down here, it's just been brilliant. And we meet all kinds of characters, and we've shared music and stories, and I've a height of respect for her. And this is the kind of thing that makes me feel at home in London.
Dad is Foxford, he's a village outside Foxford. Mum's a village outside Swinford. They're still alive in their mid-80s now. You know, Dad played the box and I did a show band thing with him. 30 years ago, I ran the social club circuit. But my heart is actually in traditional music, you know, where that's where I'm actually coming from as well. And I learnt that from my dad.
My mum and dad are from Ireland, from Sligo and Donegal. My dad's Sligo, mum's Donegal. They came over here in the 50s, 60s, that wave of emigration to London. Got married here, had 6 kids. We grew up in West London. And, you know, with a love of Irish culture, really. There was a lot of Irish in Hayes, Botwell Church and Botwell Social Club. GAA started growing up. My dad was quite involved with it, and my brother.
I think the music scene, as far as the trad Irish session thing is going, is as healthy as it could be. It's there for people to find. You know, we're lucky. We've got this. It's an inherent thing in our blood, and I'm quite proud to be an Irishman in London, born and bred here. But you know, I feel quite proud to be part of that culture.
I miss you. Now never understand how I left you for this foreign land against my heart. Whatever fortune comes my way, whatever may befall, I know I'll make my final destiny.
Well, a big thank you there to Geraldine Gilmartin for inviting us along there to her weekly session in South London. We're going to take a break right now, but do come back to us for the second half of the show. You're very welcome back to the show. Marcus Howard is a historian and independent filmmaker who has recently documented some of the stories of relatives of people who took part in the 1916 Easter Rising. We went along to a lecture in Wilson that he gave recently on the life and times of Michael Collins. Marcus, I believe you do actually have a relative that fought in the 1916 Rising.
Yeah, his name was Arthur Green. He would be my great-great-granduncle. And one of the things that often happens is Dundalk, where I'm from, usually gets left out of the 1916 story. In other words, Galway mobilised and Enniscorthy mobilised, but the old McNeill countermanding order had a detrimental effect on what was happening outside the city. Now, they were meant to hook up with the guys around Ashburn, where the Battle of Ashburn happened, but unfortunately they didn't have mobile phones, they didn't have, Facebook, Twitter, what's going on here. So they didn't make the connection. However, they all have witness statements, pension statements, they got medals. And I found it was lovely as a way of telling these stories. I also got to tell my own relative story, which I thought was really, really lovely, because he actually thought that he was forgotten about. He was a member of the Dundalk 1916 Association, but he got ill and he didn't have any kids. And I saw this and I thought it was very, very sad. But he had an amazing witness statement, and I've told the Dundalk 1916 story. We have got Dundalk back on the map, and if there's one thing that I'm quite proud of, that's it.
If any relatives of people that fought in the Rising are watching tonight or that want to get in touch, can they do that?
Absolutely, and I'd love if they did. I'm a member of the 1916 Relatives Association, but my email is easterrisingstories@gmail.com. I'd be happy to get in contact with them. One of the advantages of being a 1916 relative is that you have all the contacts in terms of networking, a number of relatives. However, there are a lot of relative stories who they don't get told because the more famous people get told, and I think that shouldn't happen. I think that some of the smaller stories, well, if you call them smaller stories, are just as important, because you want to know who were these people, why did they go out? Like, they're going out to fight the British Empire, and not only that, the British Empire were well trained as an army, and these people were volunteers, and yet they had the courage, the pluck to go out and do that. I don't know many people today who would maybe think about doing something like that.
We're here at the Wilson Green Library for your lecture. How did that all come about?
I was contacted by Hercules Education, and they said that they're interested in doing a Michael Collins lecture. Next thing I know, I'm over on the plane and I'm here in Wilson Green. People here can expect something different. Also, they're going to find out what different people have actually said about him, not necessarily what an historian 40, 50 years later has said, but maybe from witness statements what different people thought of him. Some people liked him, some people in 1916 didn't like him. For example, the name the big fella wasn't always used as a term of endearment. You know, it's like, are you the big fella? You know, that can be used as an insult. Because he was seen as very, very hot-headed. Michael Collins could be a lot of things to a lot of people, okay? It can depend on your viewpoint as well. Some people see him as a superhero, some people see him as a supervillain in the sense of he didn't get what some other people would have wanted from 1916. Michael Collins, he tended to be adaptable. He could change depending on the circumstance. He could be ruthless. He wasn't afraid to get his hands dirty. In 1916 it was like a big grandstand, okay, to show the British, to get international attention maybe. With Michael Collins, he was more involved in maybe flying columns. He was more involved in maybe hit squads. He's more involved in intelligence surveillance. He was more involved in just getting done what needed to be done at the time. He had spies on the ground. He had the people were behind him an awful lot of the time in the War of Independence. Now I'm going to be focusing on 1916 and the War of Independence, not the treaty and the Civil War, which is the more famous period of him. But I thought it'd be unique, original, and interesting to maybe focus on that.
So he was originally from West Cork, the what's known as the Rebel County.
Absolutely, but then he also came over to London, and he also found that he joined the IRB while in London, and he established a lot of contacts in London before he came over to Dublin for the 1916 Rising. He was a member of the Kimmage garrison in Dublin, and I thought that would be a unique kind of angle to kind of bring into this talk as well, because we are in London and it'd be nice for people to relate. For example, he was sworn into the IRB in Barnsbury Street, where the Oriya designer shop, I think, is at the time. One really interesting thing that I found out about Michael Collins was that he was saying the Irish people weren't engaged in the idea of a republic. In other words, the idea of a republic was not being sold well to the Irish people at first. The reason that the republic was promoted was because it was the opposite of what Britain were offering. Britain were monarchical, or the Irish wanted the opposite, or as far removed from that as they could be. And that only became into being more the idea of a republic to the Irish people when the treaty came along, and you had the big debates between Michael Collins and De Valera there.
You mentioned earlier on that you've done some documentaries and some interviews with relatives of people who fought in the Rising. Tell us about that.
I run the YouTube channel Easter Rising Stories. Now I've got about 40, 45 films of relatives' stories. I've got James Connolly's relatives, I've got Patrick Pearce's relatives. I have a video which is the 102-year-old son of Michael Mallon. He's the only person who's still living that's a direct descendant of the 1916 leaders. He was also given Freedom of the City of Dublin this year. I've also interviewed Elizabeth O'Farrell's relatives as well. One of the main issues that an awful lot of relatives were having is Muir Street, the issue of Muir Street. It was after the GPO, the rebels went to Muir Street. It was the last stand in a way. And at the moment, the relatives, 100 years later, are fighting to save that street. So 100 years ago, they were making history, and 100 years later, their relatives are trying to save that history.
I know the blood these streets have soaked of soldiers, children, and pub fights. I name the ghosts that walk about the dim-lit pavements of the night, the little commerced alleyways too narrow for this age. And that we can't.
It's a terrace of houses, and basically when they retreated from the GPO, they burrowed their way through all the houses, and they had a council of war in at number 16 as well. But the problem is that it's going to be demolished in place of a shopping centre, and Dublin does not need another shopping centre. When you go to a city, when you go to any city, you want culture, you want what makes it unique. Dublin's 1916 history, and you can see from all the 1916 tours, there's a market there. Not only does it make business sense, but also culturally, it's nice to actually go visit a piece of old Dublin. And not only for the 1916 historical aspect, but also for the market traders, because it's well known as being a place where people traded. I've done a number of films about Moore Street. I got one of them shown in Chicago. The great-grandson of James Connolly brought a film over to make them aware of what was going on. There was even a Moore Street bond scheme that was launched, because we're trying to bring this back to the people. It's the people's history. It's not maybe a developer's history. It's not for the government to decide. What gives this generation the right to knock down this history for future generations? If I have kids or grandkids or whatever, they'll be deprived of this if we don't save it now. If it's knocked down, it's knocked down. It's gone.
Never to be seen again.
Never to be seen again. And I think that's a real travesty. I think it's a real jewel in Dublin that should be treasured.
Could quite destroy their glory's trace. For often in O'Connor's van to triumph crashed each Connacht clan, and fleet is the Normans ran.
Marcus, any plans to come back here with any future lectures?
Yes, I've been asked to come back here next year, and also another group, the Wembley Historical Society, have asked me to come along as well. I can do a number of lectures on 1916. It's my expert topic, but also Michael Collins in terms of the different aspects of his life. Like, you can tell the Michael Collins story a number of different ways. I'm just telling it a certain way tonight. But I mean, you could focus on the truce, you could focus on the Civil War as a presentation in itself. The appetite is just going to grow and grow for this, because we're coming into the War of Independence. 1916 is kind of just tipped over. Frongach, 100 years ago, all these people were in, and they were germinating what would eventually become the new War of Independence eventually.
Have you a website if people want to log on to find out more about your own lectures?
I have a Facebook page, Easter Rising Stories, and a YouTube channel, Easter Rising Stories. The Facebook page will give information, pictures, quotes, also links to the videos. And I use the Facebook page to promote the videos. The YouTube videos themselves, there's usually a new one out every 2 weeks.
And fleet is the Normans ran through Corsley Pass and Ardrahan, and later times saw deeds as brave, and glory God's clan Ricard's grave. Sing, oh, they died their land to save, at Auchrom's close and Shannon's way.
Many thanks there to Marcus for inviting us along to his lecture on the life and times of Michael Collins. If you'd like to contact the show, send an email to ian@irishtv.ie. You can also find us on Facebook and on Twitter. Unfortunately, that's all the time we have right now, but do come back to us next week when we'll be out and about in the UK.